All right, all. I thought I'd put together this short video since we're not going to have class next time. As I went around the room, I saw a lot of good work in the paragraphs, but I thought I'd offer you all some strategies to develop this and take all my advice I gave you in class. But here's something else you can do in our class or in other classes to develop paragraphs, to develop a paper, so you know where to go next, so you don't feel like you're saying the same thing over and over, and each paragraph has its own purpose. As you know, there's many ways to paragraph, so trust yourself, one main topic, link to old, all the things we've talked about. But here's one thing I'd like you to think about. When you read your sources, even if they mainly agree, what's new in each source? What's the new thing that they're saying, even if they're in agreement with each other? This is what you want to read for, because that's what you can build a paragraph off of when it comes to sources. So what does this source say to support my argument that other sources that agreed did not? And that's how you want to be reading this stuff, right? So you're always reading for the new thing that they're saying, even when they agree with everything. So what does that look like in writing? Well, we can look back at that page I handed out today in class. And just briefly, if we start right here, this is a section that basically everything, it feels like it's saying the same thing over and over and over. So you have to ask yourself the question, well, why do we need to say all of this, right? Is there something new going on inside of here? Why did Gottschall need to write all these paragraphs? He could have said it in one. But I'm going to suggest there's some small differences. So let's just take a quick look. You can read your book, you can read the handout, you can read here in the video. This is page 132 in the book. So just notice that he opens with stats with a common opinion or belief, and then he contradicts it to move into his own claim. So interesting, he opens up with kind of like a they say, I say paragraph, even though this is not the beginning, right? He's got the they says or the counter arguments and then moves into his own. Interesting thing is he basically says that violence is unacceptable, and stories point that out. Violence is unacceptable. Is acceptable only under clearly defined circumstances to protect the good and the weak from the bad and the strong. Right. So he says, yeah, video games might challenge that a bit, but for the most part, this is true. So here's our big idea. So is he just saying this over and over? Probably not. We've got to modify this in some way. So here's the first thing I'd like you to see. He moves to a specific field, psychology. This isn't so different than our first paper, where you picked different people talking about happiness from different fields. We'll learn a lot more that way, right? You can do that type of interdisciplinary work. So it's a new source, has a new point. Great fiction is subversive in spirit. He says it's not subversive. All fiction is moral. Notice one thing that he might be doing is he's left video games and these counterexamples behind, and he's just focusing in on fiction right here. And so that's the new thing that he's doing. He's also pointing out that fiction doesn't need to be subversive. It doesn't need to challenge social norms. Rather, he argues in this paragraph that actually fiction is for, here's probably our big new idea, pro-social behavior, right? And disapproving of greed and things like that. Notice that we didn't see the words pro-social behavior up here. Yeah, these are almost identical paragraphs, but we've got a big new idea right here. That's the new thing that's happening in this paragraph. So as long as you've got that, you've introduced something, you describe this in great detail, and your paper's moving forward, even if it seems like you're saying more or less the same thing you set up here. Okay, but one big new idea and a nice big term to go along with it. Something we can talk about a lot. Researched in many articles, right? If we keep moving from there then, here we've got a new field, a book on the craft of fiction. So this is more like an English department, how to be a writer rather than psychology, right? So we've got a new source, a new field, and now we've got a new paragraph. So it's paragraphing kind of by source. He's looking for what's new, what each source says, and then agreeing with it or disagreeing with it. And that's how he's building his paragraphs here. You could do the same in your paper, right? So as we move through here, we get a little bit of history. We say he basically is arguing that even when there's no bad guys, fiction is still moral, right? If the old argument was, well, we see good guys and we associate with the good guys, he's saying even when there is no good guys, we still know how to be good. So fiction is teaching us to be good. So although these two look the same, they are different in what they're doing, right? And so again, a slightly new idea taken from a slightly different source and in a new field as well, right? But something slightly different going on. All right, so we get the closing idea right here. We can then move on. Notice he's got a nice old new topic sentence. This has all been about general pattern of conventional moralizing in stories. Now he's going to switch gears. He says, hey, right in his topic sentence, where does this come from? Right? So now he's normed what fiction looks like and the messages it sends. Now he's getting maybe farther into the psychology. He's got a new source, so new paragraph, new source. That pattern continues. So every paragraph has a new source that he's basically explaining their viewpoint. What did William Flesch say about being good and how fiction makes us good that this paragraph did not? That was based in Charles Baxter. And what did Charles Baxter say that Jerome Bruner did not, and those type of things, right? And that's how we're reading this and then writing it up eventually. So this paragraph asks, where does it come from? We know right away. Part of human nature. Simple, but it needs to be explained. That's the purpose of that paragraph. Well, what parts of human nature? Well, here's a new source again. Oh, it makes societies work better. So that's a specific aspect of human nature. Different enough that we get a new idea and we can build a paragraph off of it. They celebrate pro-social behavior. We're kind of returning to old stuff, stigmatizing antisocial behavior right here. So all new stuff we haven't heard quite yet. A little bit different way of hearing it, right? And so that's a good reason to have this paragraph. So rather than bringing up new subjects, we're breaking down old subjects farther, the types of behaviors that are pro-social or not. All right, if we keep going, we've got just a new field, a new study. What's happening here? Probably not a brand new idea, but rather here, what this source is doing is just confirming what we already seem to believe over here. This is sort of people theorizing and saying, maybe this is true. This one is highly scientific. He reviewed dozens of scientific studies. So new field again. Science agrees with these other fields over here that we've covered, right? And we have a lot of scientific information to prove this true. So that's this paragraph. If we move into the last one, we've got a very, very specific study on TV, right? And so again, a new study, a new field, or a new source, however you'd like to think about it. And then we get a nice description of Apple's study. Notice we talked about this earlier in the semester, the findings, and they're kind of linked back to the main point, and then sort of a description, a detailed description of what was found, or maybe even how the study was done, depending what you want to do in your own paper. We did talk about explaining how studies are done, and then giving the findings and linking it back to your thesis. We discussed that earlier in the semester, and I jotted that down here. You might remember it as looking like this. Here's a pattern for writing up paragraphs that are pure research. Mention the researchers, their basic interests, explain the study, explain the results, put the results into discussion with past findings. Are they the same? Are they different? Right? Well, what's happening in this one when he does that? Apple's study is the same, right? And these scientific studies, the same. But we're just showing that no matter where you go, no matter who's researching it, no matter how they research it, they're all finding the same thing. And that's a fantastic thing to do. And you can do that sometimes multiple sources in a paragraph, or in these short paragraphs here, kind of one source per paragraph. So there's just a few ideas of what you might work with if you're trying to develop your paragraphs. There's many other ways, but stick with these in addition to what you already have going. All right, thanks.